Well, thanks for joining us for our series on Transform, where we've been talking about not being a stumbling block. Today, we're going to wrap that up with this idea of how does bad company affect us, and how does that cause us to be a stumbling block to people around us. And so we're going to look at what it really means to have good and bad company in our life. We often hear, because I've been doing youth ministry for like 15 years, and you've been doing it for a couple of years, helping out. We often hear this question, especially from the older kids. I like this girl, I like this guy, but they're not a believer. Maybe by me being their friend / even deeper, dating them,
Right.
they can come to know who Jesus is, and then we can really be friends,
Right.
And is this a healthy thing? What does the Bible really say about that?
Right.
And we come to Scripture here looking at what does the Bible actually teach us about our friendships and things. So I think back to when we were teenagers. Did you ever have a friend or a girlfriend that you just knew was bad news and you knew you shouldn't be with, but you just did it anyways?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, for like on more of a lighter one, there's remember the assemblies we used to have? Like,
Yeah.
I would gather
school
everybody
assemblies,
together
yeah.
for the assemblies. Well, there was this guy named Joe that I was hanging out with. He's totally bad news.
Yeah.
But I just thought he was super cool. But we were sitting in the assembly one day, and while somebody's doing their speech or whatever's happening, we would try to false make a clap happen
Oh, yes.
and see if we could get the whole auditorium.
Yes.
So we were doing that, and just stupid things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was a pretty good kid, did well in school all the way up until 6th grade. And then when I got into 6th grade, I moved from elementary to this new middle school. And middle school was like a combination of multiple elementary schools. So I was, to that point, I had known every kid from forever. And now I see all these new kids. And this one kid was wearing Nikes.
Yeah.
And they were Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq was big back then.
Okay.
And he played, I had lived in Florida, and he played for the Orlando Magic. So he had these sweet, awesome Nike Shaq shoes, and he was just a cool kid. He had that beach bum hair that I wanted and didn't have yet. Yeah. He cursed. I was like, well, that's weird, but okay, that's cool. Everyone liked him for it. All the girls wanted to be around him, and so I didn't know this till that point, but he only lived like 6 blocks from me, and I'd never known him,
Okay.
And so got to know him at school, and then that began a friendship, and we started fishing and everything together, being beach bums together. And I started to curse and lie and cheat and get in trouble at school, like I knew it was bad for me. I knew there was a lot of bad things going on, but I wanted that friendship. And at that time, I didn't care about, I was going to church, but I didn't care about my faith,
Right.
But then later, I had the girlfriend story, too, of, I was in 10th grade. No, 10th grade. I was in 10th grade and had never had a girlfriend and didn't know what it was like to kiss and wanted to kiss. And so I knew it was wrong.
Yeah.
And that relationship lasted like 2 weeks. And it was just to get the kiss and get out.
That's a long relationship.
Yeah, I've heard you have like a 2-day one. So,
Yeah.
But his story's not allowed to be shared.
No.
But we do. We look for these loopholes because we like stuff. We want stuff. So.
Right.
We look for these places like, okay, well, I'm there to missionary date, or I'm there to, I'm at this party so I can be the designated driver, and through my presence there, they're going to,
Right.
Without words, hear the gospel.
Right.
And that is not the case that happens so often, because the principle we see from our reading today is that believers don't team up with unbelievers.
Right.
That's just a principle. And so, our passage today
2 Corinthians 6.
2 Corinthians 6, verse 14. It says, don't team up with those who are unbelievers. How can righteousness be a partner with wickedness? And how can light be with darkness? What harmony can there be between Christ and the devil? Like, those are bold, bold words.
Right.
And so often we look for these loopholes. It's like, well, I can teach them, I can disciple them, I can bring them along. But the real perspective here is that bad always corrupts good. Like, good can't be with bad.
Right.
Light can't be with darkness. What does Christ have with the devil? If someone doesn't believe in Christ, we have no right unifying ourselves with them.
No, we don't.
Because what's going to happen, and we see this in the Old Testament, is they're going to draw us away to worship their idols. When we look back in Exodus, Exodus 7 says to go into the land and destroy them.
Right.
Get rid of them, kill them, do not make treaties with them, do not let your kids marry their daughters and become wives. Why? And it always comes back to because they will cause you to stumble and worship their idols.
That's right.
And we see that happen in Judges with Samson.
Samson and Delilah. Yep.
Yeah,
he wants this woman, this Philistine woman. He says,
right.
Get me this woman right now.
Yeah, okay, different culture than today, but then your dad had to go get you a wife.
Yeah.
And so he goes down to the Philistines, finds this woman that he thinks is beautiful, comes back and says, Dad,
go fetch that woman for me.
Yeah. And his dad's like, but she's not an Israelite. She's of the Philistines. Remember what Exodus 7 said? And how does he respond?
Go get that woman now.
Yeah, he doesn't even ignore. He's like, she looks good to me. Go get her. And that causes problems in his life. And then that marriage ends, and he ends up finding Delilah and does the same thing again.
Oh, that ends in disaster.
And that ends up getting him killed.
Yeah.
Ruins. God had wanted to use him and did use him. God still used him. And people look at situations like that, or maybe even, I know your story a little bit, and they look at it as, well, it worked out for Samson and God still used him. It worked out for you. You married an unbeliever. And
right.
And they look at those situations and they say, well, it worked out for them. It can work out for me too.
Yeah, it will work out for me.
And that's not what we see. What we see is the grace of God happen. Like Samson had to die because he chose to marry these women, and it ruined his life. He was supposed to live a long life and be used by God all the time, but he didn't. And so they become not examples of what God can do, but more like these very few and far between situations, And so, what's your story a little bit,
So just to give a background, I had become I truly accepted the Lord. Or I grew up in the church, which you guys know about, and but it wasn't till 8 years ago I accepted the Lord.
Yeah.
And so I was a fresh believer, fired up for the Lord, but I didn't know much about the Word.
Right.
Really absorbed too much of the Word. And I met my wife now, Allie. You know her. She was not a believer at the time.
Right.
She wanted to know nothing to do with the Bible, nothing to do with God.
Right.
She wanted no part of it. Completely unyoked.
Right. And what did that cause though? So you're a believer, teamed up with an unbeliever. What kind of problems did it cause between you two? So
what ended up happening was, there's always this division. There was never her and I, we loved each other and we came together on that, but there was always this division because I had this yearning to want to follow the Lord. I was fired up on the Lord. But what ended up happening over time was her bad habits and the things that she did started to wear off on me. And all of a sudden, I started ingraining myself into the world more.
Right.
I found myself, I would drink a little bit here, or I would be really involved in the businesses. I just segregated myself from the Lord and more ingrained in the Word.
You almost became that silent, apathetic believer that we talked about yesterday.
Yeah, I'm a Christian, but and really
go
just
to church on Sunday.
A walking stumbling block is what I was. And through all of that, statistically, guys, 60% divorce rate today. This is not how this goes. This is not a justification with Samson that it's going to work out.
No, you're an exception to the rule.
This isn't an exception to the rule of how things work.
Again, because of the grace of God. Like,
because of the grace of God. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's a powerful story, and I'm in awe over it. But through all of this, she saw that by me falling more into the world and falling further away from God, she saw me change as a man, because the man she met was a man that was like a man after the Lord's heart.
yeah.
And I was fired up for the Lord. I was happy, but then she started to see me become more angry, less patience,
Yeah.
just not.
I mean, you see, this Second Corinthians 6 passage, but you also see over in 1 Corinthians 15, kind of what you're saying is, it says, "Don't be fooled, those who say such things, for bad company corrupts good character."
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you had good character.
Yep.
You wanted to follow the Lord. You knew the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But you brought in this person that was bad company, and you
Yep.
made her your wife,
Right.
and she started to corrupt your good character
That's right.
that you once had.
Mm-hmm.
And now I happen to get to be around you and get to know you right around the time that the Lord was speaking to you again and
Right.
showing you, like, things have to change,
Yep.
and it's been a cool story to watch happen.
Right.
Because even at that point, I mean, Allie had become a believer, but wasn't living.
She
for the Lord.
accepted Christ as her Savior, but she didn't he wasn't her Lord. She wasn't
Yeah,
she wasn't living it in her world.
right. And that has happened since, which has been a sweet testimony to the Lord and only to the Lord.
Right.
But people can look at your story and say, well, like, that's what's going to happen in my life.
Right.
But you are, again, an exemption. Like it happened, but throughout the Bible, often we see people like Samson, it doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at our society and statistics, it doesn't happen.
No, it
Like,
doesn't.
people try this all the time, and it doesn't work unless the person's heart changes and follows the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't control that.
No, it's only the Lord is what grows that. Remember, we can plant and we can
Right.
water, but
Which-
it's the Lord that.
Which is why when we go back to our original passage in 2 Corinthians 6, and he says, don't team up with unbelievers. Like, don't do it.
Mm-mm.
Don't make excuses. Don't make reasons why you think it's okay. Because if you do it, what's going to happen all the way back from Exodus 7 is they're going to draw you to worship their idols. And that's what happened to you.
Right. And what if my wife didn't come to find the Lord?
Yeah, you
what
have
if
no
I
idea.
What if I just continued on this path, like
Yeah.
further into the world, and just a path of destruction?
Right.
Is what, like, my kids, like, how would we have raised our kids?
Right. Right. And so we have to draw to the Word and realize that bad company corrupts good morals.
Mm-hmm.
So even if we're a good person, if we bring in, whether it's a wife, a spouse, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, or just a friend,
Mm-hmm.
a close friend, we are not to team up with unbelievers, because what does righteousness have with wickedness?
Mm-hmm.
We're not supposed to ignore them. We see that from Jesus. Like, he went to those who were sinners, and he ate dinner with them, and he spent time with them, but only for the purpose of sharing the gospel.
Right.
And if it wasn't for the gospel, he wasn't with them.
Mm-mm.
All of the time when he's spent real time with people, he was with his disciples, the 12 people who knew the Lord. He spent time with them and was teaching them along the way,
Mm-hmm.
And so what partnership is there with an unbeliever? And what union can there be between God's temple and idols? For we are the temple of the living God, which we looked at last week.
Yeah.
And so specifically that of marriage, the two become one flesh.
That's right.
What does the temple of God have with idols? And it doesn't.
It doesn't.
And so our friends can be, and the friends we keep, or the girlfriend or the wife that we have, or the husband, that we have, the boyfriend that we have, can be a stumbling block for other people around us
Mm-hmm.
because of the way they live their life.
That's right.
So this goes to a whole nother level of should I?
Mm-hmm.
Because now we're not even just thinking, what actions do I do that cause somebody to stumble? But what actions do the people that I associate with do?
Right.
Because, you can get on any social media platform, Instagram, Snapchat, all these kind of things, and you can go down a bunny trail and go from, okay, I'm going to look at Michael's friends. Oh, he's friends with this guy. Well, let's see who this guy is.
Yeah, he's got something provocative on there. Like, what?
Yeah.
How come he's friends with this guy? Like,
Yeah.
is it okay for me to be friends with somebody like this now?
Yeah, and that becomes a stumbling block to people sometimes. You know? And so we really have to begin to think about who are we going to associate with, who are we going to interact with, who are we going to call our friends.
Right.
Not that you can't go out into the world and preach the gospel if that's the motive and that's what you're doing. You also need accountability. They always went out in pairs. You know, they didn't ever just like go out rogue and alone. You need accountability. You need somebody to support you. So when you fall, there's somebody to catch you and pick you back up.
Right.
But in that, understand the principle of bad company corrupts good morals. No matter how strong you think you are, you can't handle it. That is a principle we have seen since the beginning of time, that Adam and Eve were in the most perfect of all of God's creation that's ever existed. And her company of the serpent corrupted her good morals, her good motives. And then this woman that he thought was just so great that God had created for him, and he had good morals again, came and corrupted him.
Yep.
And so we just have to be very, very careful with who we associate with and thinking about how that can be actually a stumbling block for other people around us. And so I know that this one's a very tough thing because maybe you need to end some relationships right now.
Yeah, it's never easy. You just have, it's never easy.
Yeah.
And I know just having a conversation with a lot of you, you know that certain relationships that you have.
Whether it's a friend or a significant other.
Yep, or groups or whatever it is.
Or a friend group. Yeah, it could be just a whole group that you've got to walk away from.
They've dragged you into sin, and there's a choice that you have to do. You have to remove yourself from that.
Right.
As hard as that may be, that's what you need to do.
Right, and we looked at that actually back with, Joshua and Moses. That was their encouragement. Choose this day whom you will serve.
Right.
Are you going to serve the Lord with your life, or are you going to serve that friend group or that girl or that guy or that,
Right.
And that's the question that comes down to.
Yeah. Because there's so many times where you come up on these highs of like camp and like you make these pacts with God and you're going to follow him, but then as soon as you come back down, you start hanging back out with them, and then it's already gone again.
Yeah.
So you just have to make the choice. You got to just step up to the plate.
Yep.
And you have to.
They say, "Oh, we're going to do it. We're going to do it." And he says, "Okay, destroy your idols."
That's right.
And so if you need help doing that, if you need wisdom, if you need accountability to the fact that you're going to do it and you're going to stick to it, please reach out to us and let us know. And you can do that through rockyouth@hisrock.net or, messaging in this video, or private message us through some social media account. We'd love to interact with you and help you. And this is the end of this week in Stumbling Blocks. So we're shifting into a new topic, which I can't remember even what it is right now. But we will join you tomorrow at 3:00 as we continue the conversation of what it means to live transformed by the renewing of our mind.